Good evening, and thank you for joining the monthly cybersecurity webinar. My name is dr.rosales, and I will be your presenter today. In this webinar, we are going to take a look at a couple of things. The first one is we will be talking about a password strategy. The second thing or topic that we will discuss during this webinar is defense in depth, and what are some principles that you can keep in mind to, again, keep your information secure. And at the end, we're going to have some Q&A. Let's get started. The purpose of this webinar is, again, to increase awareness and help individuals and businesses become more vigilant and methodical about protecting information. As mentioned earlier, one of the topics that we'll be discussing is password strategy. Understanding why passwords are important is key. Strong passwords are important, especially when having multiple passwords for the different services that you have. As you all know, as we all know, the recommendation is not to have one password for all of your the same password for all of your services, but rather have one unique password for each of the services that you have. And some folks have asked me in the past, well, how can we do this? How is this possible? Well, it is. There is a method that I teach folks that I talk to and organizations that I talk to that help you remember the different passwords for the different services. And we're going to be discussing that method, that approach, or that method in this webinar. So before we get deeper into passwords and the password conversation, I also want to provide a little bit of context and talk about what is a hash, right? Password hash is defined as putting a password through hashing algorithm like bcrypt, SHA, etc. to turn plain text into an intelligible series of numbers and letters. This is important for basic security hygiene because in the event of a security breach, any compromised passwords are unintelligible to the bad actor. Hashes, in other words, are like fingerprints. So each password has its own unique fingerprint. And the reason why it is recommended that you have multiple passwords or different passwords for the different services that you have is because if your password gets compromised and you are using the same password for all of your services, then what's going to happen is the perpetrator will have access not just to perhaps your email account, but they might have access to perhaps your banking account or health information and so forth and so on. So what do all these services have in common, right? Many of us have Facebook accounts, Gmail accounts, Zoom accounts, Office 365 accounts, Microsoft Teams accounts, BNI accounts, and so forth. So what all of these services have in common, again, is a password. And knowing how to handle the multiple password requirements between all of these services will help you stay more secure. Again, let's recap one more time. What is the definition of a hash? Again, putting a password through a hashing algorithm, as we mentioned earlier, bcrypt, SHA, etc., to turn plain text into an unintelligible series of numbers and letters. This is important for basic security hygiene because in the event of a security breach, any compromised passwords are unintelligible to the bad actor. So let's talk a little bit about nomenclature. And again, this is something that I share with folks that ask me, it's impossible, or tell me it's impossible to have multiple passwords for all the different services that I need to sign into. Well, What I would like to do at this moment is talk about a password nomenclature that is very popular, and it has helped many folks remember the passwords for the different services that they have. So what I would like to do now is, let's see here, I want to bring up my little drawing board. Let's see here. All right, make this big. All right, so let's talk about the password nomenclature, okay, that I'm referring to. So typically when you're thinking about creating a password, there are certain things, certain complexity requirements that are needed, right? So, you know, what I recommend folks do is the following, right? First, on the left-hand side, you're going to have the capitalized initial of service, right? That will be the first section. The second section is going to be a root word. Okay. The third section is going to be a special character. Okay. And then the last section is going to be the year. All right. So let's take a service like Apple, for example, right? So if we want to create a password for Apple, okay, first we take the capitalized initial of the service, which would be the letter A. Okay, that's the first section. Then the second section would be a root word. So let's see, any suggestions of a root word? We can try. Let's see some suggestions coming in here. A root word in this case can be, let's do pizza, okay? So our root word is going to be pizza, and we always want to capitalize the first letter of the word, okay? All right, so that gives us the second section, which is the root word, right? Then the next section is a special character. So what we're going to do is we're going to use asterisk, right? As our special character. And then finally, we're going to use the year, 2021. So what does this do? This gives us a unique password for the Apple service that we have. So because it's unique, that means it has its own fingerprint. So if this password was to ever get compromised, then only your Apple service would be at risk and not all your other services. So let's take another service, for example. Let's take what's a good service? How about Gmail? Okay. All right. So again, we take the first initial of the service, we capitalize it, which would be a G. Then we take our root word, which is pizza, making sure that the P is capitalized. Then we take our special character, right, which is the asterisk, and then we take the year 2021. Again, this gives us a very easy password to remember because we know that the password for Apple starts with an A. The password for Gmail starts with a G, right? We know that both of these passwords end up in the year 2021. So what happens? As many of you know, from time to time, you get a requirement, you get a request that your password needs to be changed at least on a yearly basis. And so what this allows you to do is it allows you to have a password that you can continually change on a regular basis. Because by having the year 2021, when 2022 arrives, then what happens? Instead of having a, right, pizza, asterisk, 2021, then you will have 2022. And when the year 2022 is over and the year 2023 arrives, then you will have 2023. And again, this gives you a scheme or a method of remembering passwords that are unique to the service that you're working with, but at the same time are very, very easy to remember. So now let's talk a little bit about defense in depth. What does it mean to have defense in depth? Well, when you hear the word defense in depth, it's really referring to the three layers in defense in depth, which include the physical layer, the technical layer, and the administrative layer. So let's talk a little bit about the physical layer. So whether you are, a solopreneur, a small or medium-sized organization, it is very important that you make an effort to protect the physical layer in your organization or your office. Physical controls include security measures to prevent physical access to your IT systems, right? Such as a physical security system. If you're able to have video security cameras in your building so you can monitor the technical equipment that you have, that would be a great idea. You make sure that your computer equipment is locked and secured in areas that are not easily accessible. So these are some ideas as to what the physical layer encompasses and what it's referring to. Now let's talk a little bit about the administrative layer. When you're talking defense in depth and the technical layer, not administrative layer, the technical layer. Technical layer controls include things like controls to protect your network. They include things like controls to protect your software, controls to protect your hardware, right? So what we're referring to are things like firewall. Many organizations, and you can find these in large corporations, they already have a few firewalls, right? Depending on how their network is architected. But if you're a small or medium-sized business, you might not have something like this in place. Or if you're a solopreneur, you might not be able to purchase an appliance-based firewall, right? So what you do is you implement things like the firewall in your operating system, or if you have a good antivirus, anti-malware that also includes a firewall, then you could also install that on your systems and configure the software-based firewalls to make sure that your environment, your computers are protected in the best way possible. You also want to make sure that you have IDS, IPS systems. IDS stands for Intrusion Detection System, and IPS stands for Intrusion Prevention Systems. And again, large corporations have very large budgets and can get appliance-based IDS, IPS systems. But if you're a solopreneur or a small company or a small organization, you might not be able to have a budget for this type of hardware. And so the recommendation in this case is that you, again, find a good endpoint protection system that also includes at least intrusion detection, so that if your system is being attacked or there is an attack on your system that someone is trying to implement from a website, for example, or from an attachment that you downloaded, then at least you'll be notified and you will have a chance to remediate that problem. Again, we mentioned anti-malware, antivirus. It's very important that you have this. If you don't have it in your systems, I recommend that you look for someone that can help you obtain some basic antivirus, anti-malware for your computers. Encryption is another aspect of the technical layer. You want to make sure that your laptops have encryption enabled. Why? Because if your laptop ever gets lost or stolen, at least you will have that layer of defense. Your data will be encrypted, and it will make it a lot harder for the perpetrators to access that critical and sensitive data. Finally, one thought that I share with folks whenever I get a chance to talk to them about cybersecurity is making sure that you you follow the least privileged approach. Okay, how many of you are using your computer systems with the default administrator account or with an administrator account? Okay, I see a few hands. Okay. This is not a good practice, and it's very typical to see folks using their computers with an administrator account. Why? Because when you first procure your computer or your laptop and you set it up, your account by default is configured as an administrator account, and so following the least privileged approach means once you have set up your computer, then you want to go back and create a user account that has no administrative privileges, so that you can then sign out of your administrator account and sign in using your regular user with no administrative privileges. What this is going to do is it's going to add an extra layer of protection, because if, say, you happen to visit a website that has been infected with malware and it's attempting to download and install software in your computer, then you will be prompted. You will get a message that says, hey, John Doe, do you want to install this software? And if you do, please enter the administrator password, right? And so at that moment, then you'll think, wait a minute, I wasn't trying to install anything. No, I don't want to install this piece of software. And again, it'll prevent you from those attacks that try to install software on your computer without your permission or your knowledge. However, if you're running your computer as a regular administrator account, then what happens sometimes is this malicious software downloads on your computer and it executes in the background, and you never know. You never know it happened. Okay, so again, this is why following the least privileged approach is a good recommendation and good practice to follow. The next and final piece into this puzzle of defense in depth is administrative layer. Okay, again, this is very important because administrative controls include things like policies, procedures, right? Some examples. So, administrative controls would include a policy that requires all emails containing sensitive personal identifiable information, or PII, or EPHI, electronic personal health information, right? data that are sent via email to be encrypted. So that could be a policy that you can have in place within your company, so that whenever your employees or yourself needs to send an email to a client or a customer that has sensitive information, you do so, but you do it via an encrypted email. Another example of a policy would be a policy requiring encryption at rest for all hard drives on laptops, right? There are different operating systems that have the ability to natively encrypt your laptops. There's an option for Windows systems, and I'm sure there's options for Apple systems as well. But again, having this policy in place will help you add another layer of security to your computer systems. Another example, again, is a policy requiring a strong password. Earlier in the webinar, we discussed the importance of having a strong password, and also the importance of having a different strong password for the different services that you have. And so again, having this in writing will be extremely helpful for you and your organization. Another aspect of the administrative layer is also having proper IT governance. Okay, having proper change management in place. I've seen this way too many times where, there's changes happening in your organization, and you might not be a large enough organization to experience this yet, but it's definitely something that you can keep in mind as you grow. But organizations that have, small to medium and even large IT teams, I've seen this happen before, where changes are happening within the environment and nobody is notified. All of a sudden the computer systems stop working, or the email's not working, or the internet stops working, and nobody knows what happened, right? And then lo and behold, all of a sudden, the network engineer, says, "Hey guys, by the way, I was testing this patch, and it brought the switch down, and we lost internet connection, but we're back now. We're okay," right? Or it could be another a systems updates on a server, right? That was done without proper change management, and there was nobody knew about it, and all of a sudden there was downtime, and nobody was ready for this downtime, right? Again, proper IT governance is a huge topic in and of itself. And if you guys, think it's something that maybe we should expand on for the next webinar, I'll be happy to do so. But again, it's part of the defense in depth administrative layer, right? Vulnerability assessments are also something that you should keep in mind, whether you are, again, a solopreneur, a small, even medium-sized organization, even large businesses nowadays. They are required to, on a regular basis, do a vulnerability assessment. If you have a website, you want to have a vulnerability assessment done on your website. If you have an internal network, you want to have a vulnerability assessment done in your internal network, because you want to, as I've said it in the past, right? You can improve what you can measure. Right. And so as a solopreneur, a business owner, it is important that you level set, you baseline your environment, and know the health of your environment, so then you can start identifying points or areas that you can start improving on. And finally, the last piece that I want to share with all of you in this webinar is cybersecurity training and awareness programs. Again, I've seen a huge increase in cybersecurity attacks, phishing, ransomware attacks over the past several months, especially during the pandemic. And I think that it is a great idea for organizations that have even small teams to establish a yearly training program, cybersecurity training and awareness program, so that there could be an increased awareness as to the importance of being safe, the importance of not clicking on things that you don't recognize, right? The importance of following proper governance, IT governance, the importance of having a good password for your systems, and so forth and so on. So with that, I want to turn it over to you for some questions, and let's see, are there any questions? Okay, here we go. We have one. Has the password nomenclature really worked? Have you seen it worked? Yeah, it does. And again, because of the different sections of the password, of the nomenclature, the password nomenclature that we talked about, I found that time after time it is very easy for folks to remember. Again, once you memorize it, it's very easy to remember the passwords for all the different types of services that you have. So yes, it does work. Okay, we got another one coming in here. Where can I get antivirus, anti-malware? If you're interested in getting antivirus, anti-malware, you're welcome to reach out to me. I'm going to put my contact information on the screen for you, and you're welcome to reach out to me, and you can go to my Calendly and set up a quick 30-minute one-to-one, and I'll be happy to chat more about antivirus options, enterprise cloud backup options, and even governance. If you are thinking about implementing governance, or if you've already implemented governance but would like some guidance, I would love to have a conversation with you. And even if you want to talk about vulnerability assessments, right? I mean, is that hard to do? It's not. There are many options. There are many options out there for vulnerability assessments that I would highly recommend. And so again, if you are interested in knowing more about that, just reach out to me, and I will be happy to share more of that with you. Okay, I think that is all the questions that we had for today. Again, I want to thank you for joining this monthly cybersecurity webinar. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.